We just got a new standard banner featuring Weedy and Ifrit as our 6 stars and Lappland, Hung and Leonhardt as our 5 stars. Before we get to the banner itself, make sure to support my channel by liking, commenting and subscribing. It really means a lot to me. I would also like to point out that I only talk about these operators' gameplay. Waifus and husbandos over meta any day. You should always pull for operators you want and like instead of listening to me. I'm not your dad. Let's get to the banner itself. This is probably a skip banner as we are about to get Texas Alter banner in the near future. Ifrit will be in a certificate store and I do recommend picking her up if you have extra certificates. So moving on to the operators, starting with Weedy, a push specialist who attacks enemies equal to her block count and can summon a water cannon that also pushes enemies. Weedy also gains extra SP if her water cannon is deployed on a tile adjacent to her, and with her module she also gains some extra attack. The module also refunds half of the operator's TP cost when retreating if she is deployed on a ranged tile. The module doesn't really complement Weedy's strengths, and you probably shouldn't go out of your way to get it. Moving on to her skills. Weedy's first skill is a low SP cost auto trigger that makes her next attack push and stun. It's a great skill for the situations where you need to push enemies, but it also doesn't provide anything special or anything that a lower rarity pushers don't have. Her second skill is a high SP cost unlimited duration buff that makes Weedy attack bit slower, gives her an attack buff, more range, and makes all of her attacks push. It's a niche skill, but allows Weedy to push groups of enemies indefinitely, depending on their weight and movement speed. The skill allows Weedy to hold lanes without taking any damage, as long as you have other operators that deal damage helping out. And finally, we have her third skill that immediately pushes enemies back greatly, dealing true damage to them based on how many crits they move. If Weedy's water cannon is in an adjacent tile, it will also use the skill. The third skill is probably the hardest one to use, but can deal absolutely insane amounts of damage in some situations, especially if you can combine it with Angelina's third skill. However, the skill doesn't work well in some stages or against very heavy enemies. All of Weedy's skills are great for different situations. Let's have a quick summary. Weedy is a push specialist who can provide more unique and versatile skill set than lower rarity pushers. She excels at crowd control, but has potential to deal massive amount of damage with the right setup and situation. Her first skill is a simple push and stun. Second skill is an unlimited duration buff that gives her extra range and makes all of her attacks push enemies. And third skill is a very strong push that deals true damage based on how many crits the enemy moves. Weedy isn't the easiest operator to use, and especially using her third skill requires some planning and only works well in some stages and against some enemies. She's less beginner friendly than lower rarity pushers, and most players are just fine using those. Overall, Weedy is a luxury operator. She is very unique and can be extremely fun to use, but also very niche. She can be used as just a normal pusher. Her second skill has some value for Arknights enjoyers, but I would mostly recommend her for those who enjoy planning around her third skill and her water cannon, making more complex, fun combos and absolutely destroying enemies with insane amounts of true damage. Moving on to Ifrit, the only 6-star blast caster we have on global. Ifrit deals AoE arch damage in a long line, reduces enemies' res, and regenerates some extra SP. Her future module allows her to deal extra damage to enemies further away, and gives her a chance to restore even more SP. It's a nice module to have, and is probably worth getting once we get it on global if you like using Ifrit a lot. Let's move on to her skills. Ifrit's first skill is a simple attack and attack speed boost. Ifrit's other two skills provide much more than the first skill, and realistically you won't be using this skill almost ever. Moving on to her second skill. That is a low SP cost, auto-triggering damage boost to her next attack. That also burns enemies and reduces their defense. This is a great skill and sees lots of use in Arknights. It has very decent damage and extremely valuable defense reduction that allows your other strong operators to deal even more damage. And then finally, we have her third skill, that deals arch damage every second for 20 seconds to all crowned enemies within her range. On top of the very high damage, the skill also further reduces enemy stress by a flat amount. The downside of the skill is that Ifrit loses a percentage of her max HP every second, losing a total of 40% of her max HP over the skill's duration. The skill's damage and the extremely valuable flat res reduction usually outweighs the HP loss. The third skill gives more burst than the second skill, but requires you to time it and manually use it. Ifrit will also need a source of healing when using the third skill, and cannot damage flying enemies with it. Let's have a quick summary. Ifrit is the only 6-star blast caster we currently have on global. She deals AoE damage in a long straight line and reduces enemy stress. Her second skill also reduces enemies' defense and makes them take damage over time, while the third skill has a flat res reduction, but also makes Ifrit take damage herself. She can deal extremely high amounts of damage, and her extremely valuable debuffs work well with other strong operators. Her odd range is slightly stage dependent and requires good positioning. She also has slow attack speed and high DP cost. Overall, Ifrit is a good operator. She deals good AoE damage and provides incredibly valuable debuffs. She sees lots of use in AFK Knights as one of the go-to auto-trigger casters. And then finally, let's take a quick look at the 5 stars. Out of the 5 stars, Lappland is very strong, but Hung and Leonhardt are a bit underwhelming. If you really want and need Lappland, you should consider 10 pulling. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe for more Arknights content. See you in the next video.